Good morning. My name is Ms. Cotton, and today is Monday, November 4, 2019. In science, we have recently learned about the Earth's place in the universe. And today we are going to learn about one of the Earth's major systems, which is the water cycle. Today's I can statements are: I can predict and observe a science experiment. I can become a critical thinker through group discussions and locate answers to any question that I may have through text or digital resource. I can describe the water cycle and properly identify and label the major components of the water cycle. So before we get started, where do you think water goes after it rains? Right, it goes to the gutters, the soil, rivers. But where do you think it goes after that? Right, so today we are going to learn where water goes after it rains and how it gets to the clouds. So before we get started, we are going to do a little water cycle experiment. You should have all the materials on your desks. So you all have been split up into groups of 4. You have a plastic bucket, some sand, a small cup, a small rock, and some plastic wrap. So step 1, I want you to put sand inside your bucket. I've already done this, so go ahead and do that. Try to make it as flat as possible. Step 2, I want you to slowly pour water over the sand until the sand is damp. Don't pour too much, we don't want a whole river inside there. Just want the sand to be damp. Okay, once the sand has soaked up most of the water, we're going to move to the next step, which to place your small cup in the middle of your container. Push it into the sand. You might have to dig it in there a little bit. Push it into the sand. All right, the next is to grab your plastic wrap. Here's your plastic wrap. And cover your container. Make it as tight and secure as possible. Tight and secure as possible. Okay. The plastic should stick to your container, so it shouldn't be that difficult. There we go. Should be nice and tight. No holes on the edges. All right, now you're going to get your small rock and you want it to have an indent. So there's a decline in the plastic wrap. I can get a little bigger rock. You have a few rocks in case you need it. See, there's a decline. That's what I want. Now we're going to place our containers in the sun. And at the end of the lesson, we are going to come back to it. Okay, so I want everyone to get their science journals out. Once you have your science journals out, you are going to predict what will happen to the water inside the container. Okay, there is no wrong answer. So go ahead and get your science journals out and predict what will happen to the water inside the container. Okay. So now that we've done that, where do you think the water cycle begins? Again, there is no wrong answer, and I want you to write the answer in your science journal as well. Where do you think the water cycle begins? Okay, now I'm going to do a read aloud, and I'm going to be reading the wonderful water cycle. But before I start reading, I'm going to pass out an activity sheet. It's called What I Know Activity Sheet, and it has 3 columns: before reading, during reading, and after reading. So the first section you're going to do right now before I start the read aloud, which is before reading, and it has 2 columns as well. The first column is what I already know, and what I'd like to know. So go ahead, everyone should have the activity sheet at their desk. Go ahead and fill out what I already know. And that means what you already know about the water cycle. It could be anything, there is no wrong answer again. Put anything on there that you already know about the water cycle. After you've done that, I would like you to fill out the column that says, what I'd like to know. So what would you like to know about the water cycle? Again, that could be anything that you'd like to know. I'll give you a couple minutes to fill that out. All right, so now I'm going to read aloud The Wonderful Water Cycle by Kimberly Hutmacher. The Wonderful Water Cycle. And while I'm reading this text, I want you to fill out the during reading column on your activity sheet. What I thought to be interesting, and so you can mark anything while I'm reading, what I thought to be interesting. I want you to list the major components of the water cycle, and in your own words explain each major component. We'll get to that with a partner immediately after the reading. So you can take notes while I'm reading what you think is interesting while I read, and list the major components of the water cycle. Okay. Water, water everywhere. Where is water? The question should be, where isn't water? 3/4 of Earth is blanketed by water. People, plants, and animals are all made up mostly of water, and every living thing needs water to survive. We use water every day for drinking, bathing, and flushing toilets. Water is used for cleaning, generating power, and for recreation. Water is very important for agriculture too. Who can tell me what agriculture means? Right, that's right. It's having to do with farming. It's farming land. So you need water to grow things on farms, right? That's right. All right, thank you for paying attention. Many farmers are able to get all the water their crops need from rainfall, but in drier areas, farmers use other ways to get water in their fields. They use a process called irrigation to pump water from other sources like lakes and rivers through ditches, canals, and pipes. Did you know that when you take a sip from the water fountain at school or from the tap at home, you're not getting new water? The water you're drinking has been on Earth forever. I find that very interesting. Water has been on the Earth forever. It's not new. All the water we have now is all of the water we ever had and will ever have. That's extremely interesting. Our water travels in a never-ending process called the water cycle. And that is what we are learning about today. So one of your vocabulary words is the water cycle. The continuous journey water takes, falling from the clouds, evaporating in the air, and condensing back into the clouds. So the water you drink has been around since the age of dinosaurs. Water magic. Water is matter. Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. Can someone agree with that? Who agrees with that? Right, there's a lot of water on this planet, on this earth. And we all know that it takes up a lot of space. It can be a solid, liquid, or gas. Did you know that water can be all three? That's really interesting. Water can change form. Water is not always a liquid. It can freeze into a solid, which is ice, and it can boil and become a gas. So water can be 3 states of matter: a solid, a liquid, and a gas. Puddles of water dry up on warm, sunny days. Does the water in puddles just disappear? Anybody like to share? Does the water in puddles just disappear? That's right, no. The water evaporates. This means that the water is absorbed into the air around it. Tiny water particles called molecules are in ocean. And evaporate is another major component of the water cycle. So evaporation is when warmth from the sun causes water to rise into the air and then turn into water vapor, which is a gas. Some of these moving particles hit and fly free. They move into the air, and this forms water vapor. Adding heat makes them move faster. That's why evaporation is faster on warm days. So the sun makes the water disappear because it evaporates. Making rain. When air that's full of water vapor cools, it changes the gas back into a liquid in the form of tiny water droplets. Can anybody tell me what those tiny water droplets are before I go on? Raise your hand. That's right. This is condensation, and that's another one of our vocabulary words, condensation. When water vapor in the air cools down and turns back into liquid water. Water continues to condense, forming the clouds in our sky. That's very interesting. When the clouds get so large and heavy that the air can't support them anymore, who can tell me what happens? What happens when the clouds get so heavy and the air cannot support them anymore? That's right, it rains. Can anybody else list something else that might happen? Right, it might snow. Good job. And that's called precipitation. Another one of our vocabulary words, precipitation. Say it all together, precipitation. When clouds get heavy, the water's fall is rain, sleet, hail, or snow. Good job. So let's look at this box here. Condensation. You don't have to look too far away. You don't have to look to faraway clouds to see condensation in action. As your glass of water cools the air around it, there is less heat energy for individual water molecules to move around. These molecules join together, forming the water droplets on the outside of your glass. We call this condensation. So right here, we're going to review the water cycle, and it lists the major components of the water cycle, and this is on your activity sheet. The water cycle is the continuous movement of water on, in, and above Earth. It has 4 parts. The water cycle has 4 major parts, or 4 major components. Let's review. Evaporation is the sun heats up water in the oceans, rivers, and lakes, causing the water to turn into vapor that rises to the air. Condensation. Once in the air, the vapor cools and liquefies, forming those big, beautiful clouds. Precipitation. When so much water condenses that the air can't hold on to it anymore. The heavy clouds allow the water to fall back to the earth in the form of rain, hail, sleet, or snow. Some things you guys have already mentioned. And collection. That collection is the last major component. The water may fall back into the oceans, rivers, or lakes, or may end up on land. If it ends up on land, it may soak into the earth, becoming part of its groundwater. Or it may run over the soil and collect back into the oceans, rivers, and lakes. This is where the cycle starts over again. Okay, we're going to stop there on our reading, and I would like you to, so as you were doing the reading, you should have filled out those 2 columns. Now I would like you to get with a partner, and you're going to collaborate and talk about each component, and you're going to complete this middle section during the reading. in your own words, explain each component. You're going to collaborate with a partner, even though it says in your own words. That means you're just writing it on your paper. You're going to collaborate and explain each major component of the water cycle. So go ahead and get in pairs and do that. I'm going to walk around the room. And if you have any questions at all, please ask. Okay, so now that you have finished the activity sheet, the first two columns should be completed, the before reading section, during reading. Now we're going to do the after reading column. And this is where this has two columns as well. It says, what I know now. What do you now know about the water cycle? And also, what I'd still like to know. So who can tell me what they now know about the water cycle? That's right. So the water cycle has no starting point, right? Good job. And right, what powers the water cycle? That's right, the sun. The sun's energy and gravity power the water cycle, right? The sun kickstarts the whole cycle by heating all the Earth's water and making it evaporate. Gravity makes the moisture fall back to the Earth. What else have we learned? Right. So most precipitation falls back into the oceans or onto land due to gravity. And precipitation flows over the ground as surface runoff. And as the runoff runs into the rivers and the valley, moving towards the oceans, and sometimes in the groundwater, most of it soaks into the groundwater called infiltration. Right. So evaporation, water vapor droplets join together to make clouds. Very good. You guys all paid attention. Okay, so now that you have completed those last two sections, I'm going to pass out a post-graphic organizer. And all I want you to do is you're going to draw a picture of each major component and label it. You're allowed to use either any of the text I have inside the classroom, which is this one, The Wonderful Water Cycle, or Inside the Water Cycle, The Earth and Wool of Water, and Water, Water, Water. Okay, so once you have illustrated and labeled the water cycle using any of the text in the classroom or your computers, we're going to go back to our water cycle experiment. So who can tell me if their prediction was correct or incorrect? What happened to the water? What happened to the water that was in here? Where do you see it now? That's right, it's sitting on top of this plastic wrap. Does anybody see any water inside their cup? Yes, who can tell me what that is? What is the water inside that cup now? Very good, collection. That's right. So as you look at this water cycle experiment, who can tell me what that sand represents? That's right, it represents the earth. Good job. And who can tell me what the droplets on the plastic wrap represent? That's right, it represents precipitation. And the plastic represents the clouds. Very good. And then the water inside the cup represents the collection. And this whole thing represents the water cycle. And it continues over and over again, right? Because this water cycle has no starting point. Very good. Are there any further questions? All right. And the four major components of the water cycle are evaporation, precipitation, condensation, and collection. You guys did a wonderful job, and thank you for your wonderful attention and your engagement in this lesson. Thank you.